Good evening, and welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting for May 22nd, 2023. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall. And I have glasses, I actually could read that. Sorry, Christine. Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember William Worthland, Councilmember Michael Palermo, Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom. I'll now turn the meeting over to our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and good evening to everyone. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. The purpose of City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of City Council meetings are to hear directly from residents on items listed on the agenda. Public comments or questions are essential for Mayor and Council to consider and incorporate as they contemplate each decision. Citizens are at the top of our organizational chart, and therefore it is imperative for the Mayor and Council to hear from citizens in these meetings. If you would like to speak on an item, we ask that you fill out a comment card, which are located in the back of the room at the podium, to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. We ask, of course, that everyone will observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which should be and is reflective of this great community. The mayor is the presiding officer of the meeting and will ensure the orderly exchange of thoughts, comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision-making by the elected body. We do encourage everyone in attendance and the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. We also encourage everyone to review and participate in the various activities and offerings in the city. There are a number of events scheduled upcoming in the city, which the mayor will speak about shortly, which do promote community, physical activity, and leisure as we all make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. At this time, I would like to call Dory Griggs, the City of Roswell Fire Department chaplain, to the front for the invocation and moment of silence.
Please join me. Gracious God, thank you for bringing each of us here this evening. We give thanks for the service of Air Force Master Sergeant Raymond L. Jacobs. We also give thanks for his service and all members of our military. In the days following the Battle of the Badges kickball game, we celebrate the most recent graduating class of the inaugural Roswell Citizens Fire Academy and the 30th class of the Roswell Police Academy. We appreciate the interest of our citizens and the great support they show for our first responders. Be with the mayor and city council tonight as they move through their agenda. Guide their decisions and discussions, helping them to make the best decisions for our community. We give thanks for each member of the public safety departments, fire, police, 911 communications, giving special recognition during this National Emergency Medical Services Week to our paramedics and EMTs. We ask for your protection over each member of our public safety departments as they work together to keep our community safe. Grant each person here traveling mercies when they head home. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Dory Griggs. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call Air Force Master Sergeant Raymond L. Jacobs to come forward and lead us in the pledge.
Please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Sergeant Jacobs. I'd like to ask you to stand there, stay where you are, and I'd like to ask the council to come down with me under the first item on the agenda, the mayor's report, which is the reading of a proclamation for the esteemed Veteran of Roswell Award to Air Force Master Sergeant Raymond L. Jacobs. Proclamation, Office of the Mayor, Master Sergeant Raymond L. Jacobs, esteemed veteran. Whereas in 1966, Raymond L. Jacobs enlisted in the United States Air Force and was deployed to Amarillo Air Force Base, Texas, where he completed basic military training. He transferred to Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas for basic medical helper instruction, and subsequently Brooke Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas, where he completed technical training courses as an aerospace medical technician. Assigned as flight surgeon's assistant, he was again transferred to the 443rd Air Wing, 72nd Medical Group, 72nd Medical Hospital, Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. And whereas in 1969, Raymond, having participated in various in-flight medical duties, was promoted to the rank of senior airman and was reassigned to the 72nd United States Air Force Hospital, Wheelus Air Force Base, Libya, as part of a worldwide recoveries operation for the Apollo 11 moon landing mission. Ray served as helicopter rescue medic with the assignment to provide possible rescue and medical duties for the returning astronauts should they land in the Western Mediterranean Sea. Additionally, acting as an isolated duty medical technician, then Sergeant Jacobs provided medical care to the host nation's royal family and military leadership, most notably Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, later known as the leader of Libya. And whereas in 1982, having completed his associate's degree in applied medical operation from Queensborough Community College and Bachelor of Science degree in finance and marketing management from Mercy College, New York, Raymond sought a commission in the United States Air Force Reserves. Unfortunately, it was determined he was ineligible for commission due to his age. With continued passion and determination to serve our country, Raymond re-enlisted in the Air Force Reserves and was assigned to the 72nd Air Evacuation Squadron, McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey, where he served as an air evacuation medical specialist. And whereas, in 1990, Staff Sergeant Jacobs, deployed to Southwest Asia as part of Operation Desert Shield, participated in the medical treatment and care of wounded and ill military service members in need of medical transport to inter-theater destinations. Promoted to technical sergeant and later master sergeant, Raymond has had subsequent deployments as part of the following operations: 1991 Desert Storm, 1993 War in Southwest Asia, 1994 Persian Gulf Iraq War, 2001 Global War on Terrorism, and 2003 Iraqi Freedom, and many other classified international and domestic missions. Whereas in December of 2004, Master Sergeant Jacobs retired from his duties in the United States Air Force, honorably bestowed the following medals: Meritorious Service Medal, Combat Readiness Medal, Air Force Commendation and Achievement Medals, National Defense and Good Conduct Awards. Now therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby name Master Sergeant Raymond L. Jacobs, an esteemed veteran of Roswell, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to our country and our community, and that there is no higher calling than those who serve in the United States Armed Forces. All right, Master Sergeant Jacobs, now it's your turn. You get the microphone.
You did a dangerous thing. First of all, of course, I'd like to thank the assembled individuals here, as well as the esteemed City Council and my comrade in arms, Mayor Wilson. Thank you. This is an honor beyond everything I could have ever thought about. One thing I heard when I heard you read the proclamation, I realized I'm an old guy. But I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who here and understanding, as a former paramedic as well as a peace officer, I understand the taskings that you guys do each and every day. I salute you as a former of both of those entities. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for all of you who came out. And remember, we all serve. We all serve, and we all have served in the different capacities, the mothers, the fathers, the brothers, and the sisters. At the end of the day, we are what make this country what it is. And I thank each and every one of you. One other thing. As some of you may know, Mayor Wilson is also a veteran of the military. As a member of the American Legion, I have to make this formal. At the time he was campaigning, I asked him, would he join the American Legion? I got the application here tonight. I forgot it the other day. But more importantly, I wanted to present you with what we call a challenge coin. All of the military know what challenge coins are. This challenge coin was dated and printed from 2001. It represented the 100th year anniversary of the American Legion, and it's an honor to bestow this upon you, sir.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, you just became my favorite. You just became my favorite esteemed veteran. Like bearing great gifts. This is amazing. Thank you so much. This is about you, so I don't thank you. This is amazing. Thank you. Let's get a picture.
Please.
Okay.
With or without?
I think you should wear it.
Okay.
I do.
Whatever way you want.
This is for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Master Sergeant.
I got that out.
Okay. You too. I don't get gifts. Wow. That's a nice little flip. That is a great, that's awesome. Master Sergeant Jacobs, you haven't heard the new rule. You have to stay throughout the entire council meeting. I'm joking, I'm joking. All right. Okay, the next item on the mayor's report is a presentation for the 2023 Memorial Day Committee and Roswell Rotary Club. I'd like to ask David Young from the Roswell Rotary Club to come up and talk about the ceremony. Welcome, David.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thanks for all you do. My name is David Young, and I serve as chairman of the Roswell Remembers Memorial Day Committee. And we come here annually before the Monday ceremony to annually thank you for continuing to partnership with us at the Roswell Rotary Club in the production of the annual ceremony on the grounds of City Hall. This will become our 24th annual ceremony. We had a brief hiatus because of COVID, but we're back in the swing of things. 24th year. This year, our guest speaker is Mr. Sonny Park. He has an interesting story to tell, as during the Korean War, when he was 9 or 10 years old, obviously became a refugee of the war, but thanks to the U.S. military and determined to become a U.S. citizen at the age of 32, landed on U.S. soil with $200. On the same day, found a job in a restaurant kitchen. In 1983, nearing his 40th birthday, he started General Building Maintenance Company, landing his first janitorial contract, eventually expanding to 23 cities and more than 3,000 employees and contractors. So he has an interesting story to tell, but none of that could have been possible without the intervention of the U.S. military. So what I want to do is invite everyone to our ceremony. It's a great day. It's a great day for one reason, and thanking those who died for the ultimate reason we're here today, is to enjoy our freedoms, ability to assemble, and do the things that we do every day. So thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, David. Yeah, it's an unbelievable ceremony that the City of Roswell and the Roswell Rotary Club put on here, and the Roswell Rotary does a magnificent job. It is a ceremony that literally thousands of people come right here to the back side of City Hall, which is the side facing Highway 9. And if you haven't been, please come. And if you have been, you know what a great ceremony is and what a great job it is and what a great tribute it is to Memorial Day in our country. Thank you, David. We're combining the next two items on the mayor's report. This is the recognition of the Roswell Fire Department's inaugural Citizens Fire Academy graduates for 2023, and the recognition of the Roswell Police Department Citizens Police Academy graduates also for 2023. And I'm going to ask my colleague and the liaison for public safety, Councilmember Sarah Beeson, to share us a few words and lead us through the next pieces of this tribute.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Tonight, we honor the graduates of Citizens Fire Academy and Citizens Police Academy. I will take a very brief moment of personal privilege to show off what Dory Griggs has named the Bob from the Battle of the Badges. It's the trophy that is now shared from fire and police because the game did end in a tie on Friday. But it's really just a testament to how involved fire and police, and really 911 as well, are involved in our community. And these program graduates are really an illustration of that point. Roswell Police Department and Roswell Fire Department prioritize the development and strengthening community relationships, exemplified well through their citizens participation programs. The Citizens Police Academy is a 10-week course providing Roswell residents and business owners an inside look at their police department here in Roswell. Participants learn about every division of the department, participate in ride-alongs, and most importantly, partake in meaningful mutual dialogue about the work of their public servants. 2023 marks a historic anniversary for the CPA, which is the 30th year anniversary of this program. It originally began in 1993. Over those years, thousands of individuals, including those that you see before you today, have set aside one of their most precious resources, their time, to come and learn about this role, mission, and the work of Roswell Police Department. They've been commissioned and sent out as ambassadors to the community and share their knowledge and perspectives that they've acquired. Separately, Roswell Fire Department initiated their own program this year, culminating in the inaugural Citizens Fire Academy class. 12 participants recently completed this year's course, marking the first time Roswell Fire Department offered a citizens participation course for residents. This free 30-hour program offers participants an immersive experience, allowing them to gain invaluable insights into the fire service and its multifaceted role within our community. Through the combination of presentations and hands-on activities taught by members of all ranks of our fire department, participants had the opportunity to explore the diverse functions of our very own RFD. We are honored that they would choose to spend this time learning alongside our exemplary first responders, and we'd like to honor their dedication tonight toward building a stronger, more unified Roswell community. Thank you to our graduates who are here this evening, and congratulations on completing these top-notch courses. And with that, we have very brief comments on behalf of a representative from each course, followed by our chiefs to give their congratulations. So with that, Ian and Chip.
So my name is Chip Colson. I'm a longtime resident of Roswell in this community, and I did participate and graduate just recently from the Citizens Police Academy. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I am now I'm trying to get more involved in some events. So since that time, I've also done the torch run with these guys. That was a lot of fun. I watched the big game, the kickball game. I was pulling for the police, sorry to say, but ended in a tie. That was a lot of fun. And I want to stay more active with the department. And I think that, you know, everybody in their community really should be involved with their police department and their fire department. I think it's a great way to be engaged in the community, and I took it very seriously. I enjoyed it, and I plan on doing more, like I said, since that time. Hopefully I'll get more actively involved. But I want to thank the police department and chief for what they do. I think it shows a real big commitment, and not only resources, but the time that we spent there. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for what they do, and I'm happy to be an ambassador to speak to that, because I think the biggest thing is in the last few years, I think perception has been very negative. And I think once you see this and you can go out and kind of tell people or change some perceptions, I think is very important. And I think we have a wonderful department. We're fully staffed, very, very well trained, and I learned a lot. And I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you, Chief. Thanks, Chip.
Thank you, Chip. Ian?
Yeah, I'm Ian Murray, and I live in Roswell, and I was told I could talk for 30 minutes. I don't know about that. Okay, did somebody say no?
Ian, you can, it's just outside.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mayor and Council for allowing us to be the inaugural fire department, Citizens Fire Department. I'd like to thank Chief here. I'd like to thank Chad Miller for all the work he's done. And it was interesting because I've lived in Roswell for going on 20 years, and I've done the police academy, very good. I wanted to do the fire academy because I wanted to learn what the citizens of Roswell can do to help the fire department. So we did lots of hands-on stuff, lots of classwork, and it was good. My 12 classmates made it easier, it was fun, and it's just a good organisation. So anyone that's sitting in here who wants to do the fire academy or the police academy, you should sign up. It's a great way of learning, and what you can do as a citizen to give back to the city. A couple of things I learned that the fire department and police department need is the fire department need a backup vehicle. When they get out on shouts, because they call them shouts, big fires on Cox Road, they need backup support vehicles. So like volunteers like myself and my classmates can go out there, give them water, refill their oxygen tanks, and do stuff to make their life 100% easier, so they don't have to worry about it, where they're going to get the water, where they're going to get food. So that's one thing that came out about it. And the citizens of Roswell are in really safe hands. When you've got two fire chiefs that are like brothers from another mother, and it all works, makes Roswell a lot safer place. So thank you again, guys. Thank you for what you do for us. Thank you all the platoon chiefs, fire chiefs, and everyone else that showed up to help us out in our class. It was awesome, and you need to sign up and do it. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. Chief Conroy, did you want to, or either one, Chief Panino?
I wanted to go last, but no, thank you. And what Ian and Chip said, it's important. The relationship between the police department, fire department, the community that we serve is tremendously important. And Councilmember Beeson mentioned they become ambassadors for the city, ambassadors for us when they hear comments from the neighbors or see it on Nextdoor. Why?
Once they go through the 10-week program, they're amazed at all the different things we do, from swiftwater rescue to technical rescue to arson investigation to kickball champions. There's just a lot that the Roswell Fire Department does. So we appreciate your time tonight in helping us honor them, and congratulations, Citizens Police Academy. You've now met the prerequisite to be in the Citizens Fire Academy. So please sign up next year.
Congratulations. And with that, Mayor Wilson, we went ahead before the council meeting this evening. All of the elected officials, as well as the chiefs, representation from the fire department, as well as the police department, and our new graduates did a photo op on the stairs. So we've already documented the occasion, and I'll turn it back to you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Joe. And congratulations, graduates. Thank you for participating in the Fire and Police Academy. We're honored that you did that, and obviously encouraging other citizens, and you get a small window into the level of professionalism that serves this city. We are truly blessed with remarkable leadership, as you probably know, in our fire chief, Joe Panino, and our police chief, Jim Conroy. True, really great professionals that are outstanding, and we are so blessed, and I'm glad that you got to peek behind the window a little bit and just see how good the police department is and the fire department is in the city of Roswell. We're truly blessed by these great gentlemen and women that serve us in the city. So thank you. And welcome to my friend Mark, a regular golf guy, a guy who played with golf every Saturday. I'm sure, like a lot of you, you hear this, Sarah, all the time, is people that participate in this can't rave about it enough. And so I would highly recommend, if you get a chance, enroll in the Fire Academy or Police Academy. It's well worth your time, and I'm sure you guys feel likewise, so thank you. Next on the mayor's report, Councilmember Lee Hills is going to tell us a little bit about upcoming city events.
I'd love to, Mayor. I hope that everybody listening, everybody here and beyond is enjoying a wonderful, what I call New England spring. It lasts about 10 minutes in Atlanta area, and then it turns to 95 degrees outside. So that's May in Roswell. For all of you that are enjoying it, walking barefoot in new blades of grass, I would like to tip my hat to the parents who are living through mayhem. And for that, help is on the way. So I want to report to you that we have the Roswell Area Park Outdoor Pool opening day is Friday, May 26th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. And opening day at Riverside and East Roswell Spray Ground, Saturday, May 27th, and that's from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Also on Sunday at 7 p.m., Riverside Park, we start Riverside Sounds programming for the summer, and this is Roswell's longest-running free outdoor concert series. This month is Early James, whose genre inspiration is roots rock, Americana, and blues. So you all come out to see that. We also have just heard from Mr. David Young from the Roswell Rotary Club to talk about Roswell Remembers, which is the Southeastern largest Memorial Day celebration. That is Monday, May 29th, right here, City Hall grounds, beginning at 11 a.m. Feel free to come a little early, get your seat, visit with folks, lots and lots of people out that you may know and some that you could meet that are new. I've been coming to this, I've lived here 22 years, and I think I've maybe only missed 4. But this is a wonderful experience right here on our city grounds. We do open at 10 a.m., so you can come hang out. We'll have some displays, all open to the public, free. Pre-ceremony music begins at 10:15, and the program will include a military ceremony, presentation of colors, national anthem, Pledge of Allegiance, POW, MIA tribute, and the laying of the wreath. So we'll hope you'll join us, and if you can't, please send up prayers for all of those we've lost and think of someone who served our country well. We couldn't be here without them. Thank you, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Well said. The next item on the mayor's report is the approval of resolutions for the regulation and issuance of general obligation bonds, Series 2023A and 2023B. Mr. Ryan Luckett, our Director of Finance, would you please come forward and present these items?
And Mayor Wilson, before Mr. Luckett does that, I want to say I was definitely glad to see the number of people that bid in the competitive process. I do not work for any of those companies, nor do I work with them, but to avoid any confusion, I am going to recuse myself on this item.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. We'll miss you, and we'll be counting the moments.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, last November, the voters of Roswell approved a bond referendum authorizing $179.6 million across 3 different questions. Back in April, you all approved us moving forward with the first issuance of bonds in the amount of $86.2 million, and that bond sale occurred this morning. So we have some good news to report, and I'm going to start by asking our financial advisor, David Cheatwood from First Tryon Advisors. He's going to come up and give you a rundown of the summary of what happened today in the bond sale.
Thanks, Ryan. Mayor, Council, good evening. Thanks very much for having me here tonight. I am here to report some very good news for the city of Roswell. As Ryan mentioned, y'all were in the market earlier today, just before lunch, with both of your general obligation bond issuances. We sold those in 2 separate series. The first series was your Series 2023A. That was a tax-exempt series, and it was the proceeds going towards your public safety and parks and recreation projects that were authorized by your November referenda. And then the second series was your 2023B. That was issued as taxable debt, and the proceeds there are going to fund the new a new parking deck, which was authorized also by voters back in November. Both series were sold on a competitive basis, so all underwriting firms had the opportunity to bid on the city's bonds. We took those separately. We first sold the 2023A bonds. You had a total of 9 underwriting firms bid on those bonds. The way the competitive sale works, the award goes to whichever firm offers the lowest true interest cost to the city. So you'll see the tally there. Citigroup Global Markets offered the lowest, or proposed the lowest interest rate to the city. That true interest cost was just under 3.97%. As a reminder, this is 30-year debt that the city is issuing. So a really good cost of money, sub 4% on 30-year bonds. The 2023B, as I mentioned, that's taxable. So taxable comes with a higher interest rate. We got in 6 bidders on that one. Raymond James was the lowest true interest cost, and that interest cost was 5.18%. Both, again, very good sales, good participation from the underwriting firms, really good true interest cost on both series. Also, would like to mention that the city, as a part of this process, got the bonds rated by the two of the main rating agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's, and the city was affirmed at your AAA credit ratings. That is by each entity. That's the highest possible rating. So that speaks really well to the job y'all are doing here in the city, the good things that are happening economically, good things Ryan's doing in the finance department. So really good result there on the credit rating. Looking a lot of numbers on this page, I'm going to point you to just a couple. Within the 2023A, as I mentioned, 2 different questions there from November, public safety and parks and recreation. The public safety bonds will generate about $13.4 million to go towards projects, and the parks and recreation bond will generate about $54.4 million. Those are the highlighted figures under the project fund. This is the first issuance or first tranche of these bonds for both of those questions. The city will likely come back in 2 years approximately to do a second tranche there for the remainder, which I'll highlight on the next slide. And then on the taxable parking deck bonds, you issued the full $20 million authorized amount on that series. That'll generate, after some cost, about $19.9 million for that project. Again, 30-year repayment structure. The bottom half of this slide provides your annual principal and interest payments that you'll have on each series. This is very much in line with what we anticipated last summer ahead of the referendum process, and then in line with some of the numbers we've been running ahead of this. So you'll see your total principal and interest requirements, and then if you go and issue that second tranche for public safety and parks and recreation in a couple years, that'll just layer right on top of this debt here. Speaking of the final tranches, what we've shown you is the authorization, that aggregate amount of $179.6 million between the 3 different questions there, what you issued for your 2023A and B bonds, and so you'll see a remaining balance for Parks and Recreation, $54.5 million, remaining balance on public safety, $38.9 million. So overall, great results, big congratulations to the city. First time in the bond market in 9 years, and so again, great result. What you've got before you with your resolution provides the details on these borrowings, provides who they are being awarded to, and so once you approve that, the interest rates are locked in, and we close on these bonds in about 2 weeks. So that's when money will get wired to the city, and y'all can start spending. Happy to answer any questions you had on the bond sale. I know your bond counsel, Jim Woodward, is here as well on the resolutions.
Thanks so much. Does council have any questions or comments? Thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Just that this is a very, very exciting time. The voters demanded it, and we were able to execute, and you guys did a great job and got some very favorable terms for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Christine, I didn't know if you wanted to go ahead and let the folks know that this morning the bond sale occurred. And the city received a very favorable response. Tax-exempt bonds, both the Rec and Park public safety bonds, is just further, just as aforementioned, received 9 bids, with Citigroup Global Markets providing the winning bid at a true interest cost of 3.97%. The taxable bonds, that's the parking deck, received 6 bids, with Raymond James providing the winning bid at a true interest cost of 5.18%. So obviously, we're elated to see such favorable reaction from the market so quickly, so swiftly. And thanks for your great work, Ryan, and your team, and our folks from First Tryon as well. Thank you very much. With that being said, any other comments or thoughts from council? I turn it over to any Roswell residents who'd like to make any comments or have any questions. Being that there are no comments or questions from Roswell residents, I bring it back to the council for any additional thoughts, comments, or questions. Being that there are none, Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion on the first resolution for Series 2023A?
Yes, Mayor. Just a point of clarification for David Davidson. The entire first page is what I have to motion for the bond, for each bond.
You can just approve it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Christine, and by the way, there'll be 2 resolutions,
Yes.
2023A and 23. Okay.
Yes. Motion to approve bond resolution for Series 2023A.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Second for Councilmember Morthland. All in favor, please raise your hands in passing 2023G. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion on the second resolution for Series 2023B?
Yes, Mayor. Motion for bond resolution 2023B.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Hills. All in favor of passing 2023B, please raise your hands. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations. All right, we can invite, I think, Councilmember Palermo out of the dungeon to back in.
Mayor?
Yes.
Did you want,
Yeah, I do want that on the screen. Yes, ma'am. That's the next item on the mayor's report. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marley. Yeah, I do want that before. Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome back. Councilmember Palermo, I hope your time in the dungeon was nice. We tried to accommodate. Outstanding. All right, the next to last item on the mayor's report is a point of personal privilege. I sent an email to my colleagues, and you can see it here. There's a picture here of a GoFundMe campaign. I wish I had the scan so you could look at it. It's for Mason Colburn, a young 19-year-old young man here who is the son of Michelle Colburn, who has a business. Roswell residents has a business called A Mindful Moment. Mason was shot by an acquaintance back on March the 3rd, has been in very serious condition ever since, and it has been a great strain, obviously, to his mom, who runs the business. And so this is a GoFundMe campaign that I'd ask for all of my friends and fellow residents to take a serious look at helping out this small business and family as they're in dire need of your help and support and your prayers. So this is the Mason Colburn Recovery GoFundMe campaign. You can see there, GoFundMe.me/357-8C938. Please take a look at it. Please take a look at supporting this family in their time of need, and please give them your prayers. Thank you, Marley, very much. All right, the final item on the mayor's report is the approval of the FY 2024 budget for the city of Roswell, Georgia, in the amount of $194,275,364. This is the first reading. City Attorney Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance adopting a budget for fiscal year 2024 for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to Article 6, Chapter 6 of the Charter of the City, beginning July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of anticipated funding sources, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures from exceeding actual funding sources, and amending the Code of Ordinances to effectuate such adoption. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. The City of Roswell, Georgia hereby adopts an expenditure budget for fiscal year 2024, said budget being described below and shown on Attachment A for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia. total amount being $194,275,364. Any increase or decrease in appropriations or revenue of any fund or for any department, the establishment of new capital projects or the establishment of new grant projects, other than those exceptions provided for herein, shall require approval of the mayor and city council. A millage rate of 4.463 mils is estimated as part of the proposed budget. The millage rate has a component of 4.363 mils for the general fund, operating and capital improvements budget, and a component of 0.10 mils for servicing bonded indebtedness. The millage rate shall be adopted by mayor and council at a later date, but prior to the issuance of tax bills for the tax year 2023. This budget fixes the number of budgeted full-time positions of the city at 714. The city administrator or his designee is authorized to redistribute funds reserved for merit-based pay increase and operating contingency included in the FY 2024 budget to the various departments as necessary. Mayor and council adopt a capital improvements plan for fiscal years 2024 through 2028 as attached here to and incorporated here as attachment B. This plan does not indicate any promise of appropriation for future years or unfunded projects. Mayor and council further approve a reappropriation into fiscal year 2024 of fiscal year 2023 unspent funding in the general fund in order to establish a general fund fuel and utility contingency in an amount not to exceed $250,000. The mayor and council further approve the reappropriation into the fiscal year 2024 of fiscal year 2023 unspent funding in the general fund in order to establish a general fund grant match contingency in the amount not to exceed $100,000. Mayor and council further approve the reappropriation of all approved capital projects, grant revenue, grant funding, as well as capital project fund contingency funding that is unspent or uncollected and available as of June 30th, 2023, as shown in attachment B. Mayor and council further approve the reappropriation into fiscal year 2024 of fiscal year 2023 unspent funding for the Employee Wellness Program, fiscal year 2023 unspent funding for the city's Education Assistance Program, fiscal year 2023 unspent funding for Roswell University, fiscal year 2023 unspent funding for Police School Zone Safety Project, fiscal year 2023 unspent funding for legal services, and fiscal year 2023 unspent funding for the elections. Mayor and council further approve the reappropriation into fiscal year 2024 of unspent fiscal year 2023 approved funding in the confiscated assets funds. The city administrator and his or her designee may promulgate all necessary internal rules, regulations, and policies to ensure that this budget ordinance is followed, and if approved, this is the first reading.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it very much. Finance Director Ryan Luckett will be doing the presentation of the first reading of the FY24 budget. Mr. Luckett.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a brief recap of the presentation we went over on May 11th. Just to hit some key dates here. So as I mentioned, the initial proposed budget was presented to you all on May 11th. Today is the first reading of the budget, and the second budget reading and adoption is planned for Monday, June 12th at 7 p.m. We're going to hit some budget highlights, discuss a summary of all funds, the general fund, some highlights of our other funds, and next steps in the process. So in looking at the budget as a whole, the proposed budget is balanced. It begins the implementation of zero-based budget process initiatives, continues the prioritization of public safety investments, and it funds over $30 million for capital investment. The FY24 proposed budget, as I mentioned, begins addressing some of the ZBB initiatives that were discussed during the budget process, including enhancing the strategic role of information technology, expanding code enforcement efforts to sustain and enrich the quality of life in Roswell, increasing investment in stormwater management, and incorporating over $3 million in savings into the budget for next year. In terms of public safety investments, the proposed budget includes funding for year 2 of a 5-year full-time fire department transition plan, which includes adding 25 full-time positions. The budget also includes the addition of a full-time emergency management position, as well as best-in-class compensation for 911 communication officers and the expansion of efforts to combat crimes against children with the addition of 2 full-time positions. $21 million is included for transportation projects, and that includes road resurfacing and reconstruction, bridge replacements, Riverside Road corridor improvements, Pine Grove Road corridor improvements, as well as various multi-use trails. $5 million is included in the budget for the Historic Parks and Botanical Gardens Division Activation and Maintenance Plan. Moving on to all funds, the FY24 proposed budget includes $199.1 million in funding sources. You can see that's primarily made up of sales taxes, charges for service, and property taxes. I also wanted to mention, we talked about this at our last meeting, the proposed budget currently includes property tax revenues that are based upon the current millage rate of 4.463 mils. However, there is sufficient flexibility within the proposed budget to adopt a lowered millage rate once the tax digest is received in July. The proposed budget does not include any additional millage rate for the voter-approved bond referendum, and we'll finalize all that information once we receive the digest from Fulton County in July. And the other big piece of that was completed today with the bond sale. Other items we wanted to highlight in terms of all fund sources, we are recommending an increase in the stormwater fees. That would go towards expanding the stormwater fund revenues to enhance stormwater management capabilities. We're also recommending an increase in our water fees. Those fees, as we talked about before, are meant to help sustain the fund and reduce volatility in that fund. And the recommended rate increases also help ensure that the capital needs of the water system are met on an ongoing basis. We're also recommending an increase in our solid waste fees, and this is primarily to address cost increases that we're seeing across the board, directly related to inflation, but also including our yard waste and recycling contracts, fuel, and the increased cost of our refuse collection trucks. The total use of funds across all funds is $194.3 million, and the pie chart here gives you a breakdown of that across all of our different departments. The proposed budget also includes 714 full-time positions, and you can see that that increase is primarily tied to the increase in our public safety investment that has occurred over, including this year as well as our last fiscal year budget. Moving on to the general fund. The general fund has a total source of funds of $100.5 million. So our general fund is our primary operating fund and includes basic city services like public safety. And so the source of funds for this fund include about 1/3 for sales tax, about 1/3 for property tax, and then about 22% related to business taxes. That is spread across several departments. Primarily you see here police, recreation and parks, administration, and fire. And if we look at it by expenditure type, you can see that about 64% of the general fund is devoted to salaries and benefits of the full-time positions that provide those services to our residents. Overall, in the general fund, we have a summary here for you. So you can see that our beginning fund balance in the general fund is estimated at $27.4 million. We're projecting revenues of $98.9 million. Total operating budget across all the departments of $97.1 million. Proposed capital funded by the general fund of $3.3 million, so that gives you the $100.5 million total proposed general fund budget. The fund balance reserve requirement is at $23.4 million, leaving $2.4 million as remaining fund balance. Moving on to our other funds, we provided some highlights for our enterprise funds. So our water and sewer fund, source of funds here is $5.4 million, and use of funds is at $5 million in the proposed budget. Our stormwater fund, total source of funds at $4.5 million, and use of funds at $4.5 million. Solid waste fund, total source of funds at $14.3 million, and total use of funds at $14.3 million. Our hotel motel tax fund, total source of funds at $1.8 million, and total use of funds at $1.7 million. Our impact fee fund, you can see we've allocated several Transportation projects here, 3 different bridge replacements and the design money to go towards getting those off the ground. And then finally, our American Rescue Plan Act Fund. This includes reprogramming of about $3.4 million along with existing fund balance to fund the full $5 million allocation for the Historic Parks and Botanical Gardens Division Activation and Maintenance Plan. You heard Mr. Davidson read the budget ordinance. That's part of the adoption process. And the budget ordinance itself sets the allocation of budget by fund and department. It authorizes the number of full-time positions across the city. We are recommending through the budget ordinance the establishment of a contingency for fuel and utilities as well as a grant match contingency. The budget ordinance also includes authorizes the reappropriation of certain expenditures. And these are funds that are unspent and available as of June 30th, 2023. And that's funding for all of our capital projects, our grant projects, confiscated asset funding, employee wellness program, our education assistance program, which is our tuition reimbursement program for employees, our Roswell University program, which is education funding for employees, the police school zone safety program, external legal services, and the municipal election. Next steps, the proposed budget is posted on the city's website at roswellgov.com/budget. And as I mentioned before, our next reading of this is Monday, June 12th. That would be the second budget reading and final adoption. And we'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that very much. Well done. Does council have any questions or comments for Mr. Luckett? Councilmember Palermo, I can't believe that you actually have a question or comment. So I don't believe it.
I did get to go first at at that first reading, so I'd love Councilmember Beeson to have the honor if she'd like.
You might have the same questions, so that's why I was like, just go ahead.
I doubt that, but I am optimistic we'll agree with a lot of other comments, et cetera. So my comments are still somewhat similar to I had at the first reading that we had. And first of all, definitely really glad that there was support and an agreement to push back when the second reading would be to a regularly scheduled meeting. So I think that makes for a better process, and really glad that we're doing that and appreciate that. Big picture is I have concerns that whenever we do an annual budget, and I've certainly said this for years during the same process, it's really our opportunity to state what our priorities are. And with that, I think we have a lot of great important priorities for the residents of Roswell. I do feel at the same time there were some priorities that are not being set as priorities. And the big example I brought up last time that I still continue to feel is the resurfacing of roads. So constantly we're hearing from residents of the importance of repaving and resurfacing. And certainly in the last few years, we had started doing it where basically we would not fund it to an appropriate amount, and then at the mid-year, then have the extra money left over to fund it an appropriate amount. And I think I absolutely support a mid-year process, but again, that should not be for the top priorities, which again, I believe transportation is a top priority. So that's a major example that I think it's really important to make sure that we're funding properly and showing at the beginning of the year it's a priority. There's also aspects I want to better understand from a park maintenance standpoint. That's a question that I have, that just want to understand what we're doing to make sure that in the future we're not going to be running into the what is it, Councilman Worthland? What do you call that? Deferred maintenance. So I just want to make sure I understand that clearly. And then another example is even just there was a time where we always, even if it was a small amount, putting something into sidewalks to make sure we're building up that fund. That's something I think we should be continuing to do. So that's the side of it where I have concerns regarding the priorities that we're setting. On the other side of it is, and this is just me personally speaking, and I certainly hope I'm wrong, but I am concerned that we're going into a recession. If you look at the bond markets, it'd be great if we still had the bond consultants here. The bond markets are definitely signaling recession. The irony is the stock market is not, but actually that's really driven a lot by the tech firms and the largest companies, but if you look at a lot of the bellwethers, obviously financials, real estate, even just a lot of other core companies and industries, definitely signaling a recession. And my concern is, with this budget, are we setting ourselves up to make sure that we are really prepared if we do see a decrease in revenue, et cetera. And even with that, a part of that challenge is whenever we add more headcount, we're adding more just ongoing costs. And I even really have challenged and questioned some of the aspects around these. So for example, $119,000 base salary for a customer service manager when potentially going into an economic downturn. So I have a lot of concerns with that number and for that role. Even interestingly enough, actually a Roswell resident, I was curious. I asked her, she's in the wedding planning business, and I asked her, a typical wedding planner role, and this salary is more than she sees in the when she works with a lot of different wedding planners in the private space. So that's where I have a lot of just concerns with the budget big picture. Before I yield over, and can't wait to hear what Councilmember Beeson has to say, I do want to again just say that I'm so proud of staff and this mayor and council for the progress made with zero-based budget. I had been advocating for that years, and it was never support for it. And this mayor and a fantastic finance liaison, Councilmember Hall, as well as his council, all very much supported it, and I think that's fantastic. And last year was my 7th budget, and without a doubt, last year was the budget I was absolutely most proud of, and of all first 7. And so my goal is, I'm not optimistic we'll get there tonight with this first reading, but for me to support a second reading, my hope is that we can get to a budget that I'm just as proud of as we were for last year. So those are all my comments to address.
Thank you, Mike. Councilmember Beeson.
Thank you. Actually, I do agree with you. So glad to let you go first. With a lot of the statements that you said, I was not on council last year, well, up until December, when the bonds were being discussed and there was a roadshow. But one of my big hesitancies that I even said while I was running was this idea of using bonds to cover things like deferred maintenance or sidewalks. In my mind, that's something that we really should be using our funds that we're accruing as a city for, and not waiting until it becomes an emergency and then we have to figure out what we're going to do to fix it. So I completely agree that that's something we should be maintaining over time, not waiting until it starts to fall apart and we have to scramble. Additionally, there was a couple of line items, and we don't necessarily have to get into it right now because we still do have a second reading, and I realize that some things are still shifting and changing, where there was significant differences between last year's fiscal year and what this year's proposed budget was going to be for some of the line items. So at some point, I will need to get with Ryan and Lynn to see if I could get some clarity on those. And I know that y'all have been clarifying a handful of items for me back and forth, and I appreciate that. So those are some points of concern. And then lastly, with our partner organizations, I want to make sure that I have clarity. Those are not going to be approached until we discuss the MOUs in July. Is that correct? Or is that something that is in this phase?
They are, you could probably see, I think if you saw the summary of the partner organizations for FY24, you can see the funding for all of them, for all 5 of them, and they're basically fully funded. The question is, obviously, that funding is part of the budget process, but there is a request, obviously, that the MOUs be agreed upon and signed by both the city and the partner organizations before the funding fully takes place.
Got it, thank you. And then before tonight, did we have this document, Ryan and Lynn?
That was what we provided on last Friday.
Got it, thank you. Because that was the one that I believe Councilmember Palermo, when we were having internal discussions via email, he had pointed out that there's a $130,000 discrepancy in that. Is that the number that you came out?
I can't remember the exact number.
It was somewhere around 130,000. So that was where I was trying to figure out, based off the number that was originally provided in the partner organizations for a total cost versus the discrepancy in these line items. They didn't quite match, with the exception of my understanding of, there was one with Roswell Inc. that I understood because it was redundant with it was $40,000 because we already do a retreat. So that to me made sense because that would be redundant. But there was still, I think, $90,000 give or take that I couldn't quite account for. So if I could get clarity on that one, and then the other items I will get with Ryan before the next reading to see if I could have better clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other thoughts or comments from council? Okay, very good. Thank you, Christine. All right, so now I'll turn it over to any Roswell residents that'd like to have any questions or comments on the first reading of the FY24 budget. Going to bring it back with no comments from any Roswell residents. I'm going to bring it back to council for additional thoughts, comments, or questions. Council Member Hills.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wilson. Just one nugget regarding the wedding planner, and again, not to get into the minutia, is my understanding that that is a value set aside so that we can set up a structure where we can leverage the amount of sales that a planner has on these historic assets and otherwise, and then be compensated by commission and have a structure set up that way. So that was my understanding, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but is that anything that we need to, I just wanted to clarify that there's some flexibility in there, but if we don't plan for it, then we can't pay it out. So that's to incentivize the sales while we're monetizing our rental facilities. And I do find that number to be worthy of a very ambitious salesperson.
Thank you, Lee. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Just wanted to address Councilmember Beeson and Councilmember Palermo's questions or concerns about the paving budget. So over the last, actually, we haven't had a consistent paving plan for many, many years. And this council, in the last year and a half, really started focusing on that. And as part of this budget, what we have funded for our transportation director, Littlefield, and the transportation department is funding of an actual PCI program. And perhaps we could ask Director or Assistant Director Cox to come up and talk about that so that my council colleagues understand the program. And this is something just in a nutshell, and he can provide a little bit more detail, where we are going to have an intentional and strategic plan going forward into the 5, 10, 15-year plan as to what the expected life of our roads is, so that we're not just picking numbers out of the air for the budget on how much paving we're going to do.
Christine, that's a really good point. So one of the things is, and if you look at your attachment, in attachment B, your CIP, your capital improvement plan, you'll see, for one, a 5-year distribution of an actual planning of actually outlining, which is one of the things this council and the city, in my opinion, needs to be getting into, which is long-term projections and understandings and commitments to certain funds. And you'll see in here through 24 through 28, a 5-year commitment of a minimum $4 million per year on the paving plan. But as Christine just allotted to, which I think Dave's going to put in some additional professional expertise on, is one of the distinctions is actually understanding what your actual needs are. And then the real question that would become before the council for both short-term and long-term policy questioning is, what is the right standard based upon what you actually understand what your requirements are? And so I think Dave's going to talk a little bit about that, is one, bringing in the technology to actually understand what is the current level servicing of your roads, and what do you want it to be ongoing for a city, which means what is your ongoing commitment to dollars. But one of the things we put in is a short-term commitment here for the next 4 years, actually 5 years, of $4 million per year. But that may change based upon the knowledge that we ascertain and basically the commitment level that the council wishes to commit dollar-wise based upon the understanding of that and the commitment in years to being the #1 family community in America. So with that, thank you, Christine.
Thank you for those comments. Regarding the PCI rating, we strive for average around 70. That's on a scale of 0 to 100. Generally, when you repave a road, it has a life expectancy depending on its use, truck use, the weights that impact it. Ideally, they last for 15 to 20 years. Some of the busier roads that get the higher truck traffic might last 12 to 15, where some of our residential streets can easily go 25, maybe even 30 years before they start developing the cracking and erosion. Generally, you start to target repaving after 12 to 15 years. And I have actually kind of a historic map of, oops, so you can see that. The color doesn't show up very good, but this is looking back at the history over the past 13, 14 years. It's hard to tell on the screen here, so I don't know if the color is good on your monitors. But basically, we kind of looked at all the stuff we've repaved over the past in 3-year increments. So the dark blue is the most recently repaved, and it starts to get to a lighter blue, and then the greener colors are stuff we repaved a little over a decade ago. I just want to point out this does not include the state highway system, such as Holcomb Bridge Road, Highway 9, which will likely be repaved in the next 12 months, State Route 92 that was repaved a few years ago, or 400. This is just what Roswell maintains. We maintain about 350 miles of roadway throughout the city. That does not include the state routes. That does not include private roads. It's just the public roads that we maintain. We actually gave a good presentation back in 2020, about 2 months before the pandemic, outlining the process, and it's a good time to revisit that, of how the PCI rating comes, and after about a decade, the score kind of falls off a cliff. It's on a plateau for a while after you're paved, and then it starts to quickly erode. So our repaving budget, as previously stated, was around $4 million a year. That included $1 million in LMIG funds. That's the state grant funding we get every year that we have to match. And due to recent cost increases, we've upped it to, we requested ideally be up to $4 million plus the LMIG for a total of $5 million. And then we've had discussions with our finance department to see if we can request more during the mid-year budget, if that is the will of the mayor and council.
Dave, also, I think it might be helpful to edify one of the things, since bringing Jeff Littlefield on and obviously with your leadership as well, is that one of the things that Director Littlefield has identified is perhaps a better use of the dollars in terms of how we spend the paving dollars, and the fact that it's not just about the total dollars, it's about the efficiency of those dollars used, and that we discovered perhaps that we weren't as efficient in the past in terms of how we were spending some of those dollars. So it's not just the total dollar spending, it's the efficiency of those dollars spending. Perhaps you can address that some.
Yeah, our new director, Jeff Littlefield, who came on board from North Carolina DOT, identified some improvements or opportunities in the way we do our maintenance contract, so we can get some extra bang for our buck. We're working on that to implement that for the new year in the FY24 budget, which we'd be doing that campaign probably starting next spring or late winter when the temperatures warm up. And then the other thing, part of that you mentioned, Mayor, a few moments ago, was we wanted to get a better handle on our PCI rating. We had done that originally using software a few years ago. We haven't been able to use parts of that, so we've been relying more on windshield surveys with our inspectors, which has been good. However, getting this data set through this third-party contractor, which is actually in the procurement process now, we've already secured a few quotes, and we'll be likely to be taking that out to launch very soon. But once we get that data, they have trucks that drive around the city and use measurements and data, lasers and all kinds of things like that to measure the quality of the pavement. And once we get that data back, hopefully near the end of the summer, we'll be able to take a look at our list, sharpen our pencils a little bit, and come up with a 5-year plan looking out on the horizon of what we need to be repaving over the next 5 years. We already have some very high level, a wish list based on the map here of what we need to address. But that'll definitely help us moving forward, and we're very pleased the mayor and council gave us the tools to get that done.
And to your point, you're going to need feedback. You're going to need direct policy input from the council, because once I think the council gets more educated and we get more educated on where we actually are across the city on the PCI ratings, the council may come back and say, to be the #1 family community in America rating, to be the #1 family community in America, we want a PCI rating through the professional knowledge that you guys suggest. Hey, it's going to be 73, or it's going to be 75, or it's going to be 76, based upon a whole lot of criteria. So there's a lot more to this discussion than simply just a simple allocation of dollars, other than the long-term commitment, which I think the council feels really strong about, is that unlike in the past, there is a firm commitment to commit dollars to repaving in a very aggressive way in this city.
We're very pleased to have the conversation, so
thank you, Dave.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. And Mr. Cox, thank you for the very technical discussion. That being said, here's what I'm basing my thought process on. As you mentioned, we used to spend $4 million a year, And feedback we got from a lot of residents was it wasn't enough because a priority for them was not having roads with the different issues that they would see and they'd point out. And I just heard you now even just mention that pavement and doing that is more expensive now than it was back then. And so to see that we're gonna.
That's not what he said, Mike.
So I thought you said the price of pavement and repaving went up.
Costs have gone up, that's why
Costs
we're
have gone
requesting.
up, but,
Yes.
yeah.
So therefore, spending the same amount when it was less expensive means it would cover less roads. Is that right?
Yeah, but you've been spending money historically much less than what we spent. Yeah, historically, you're paving.
It's been 1.8 or 2.2.
Total.
So going back, how many years? Because there were definitely years where the match that we get, we'd always be going over the match.
Yeah, we always request at least enough to get the match from the state. That is a hard
But
requirement.
that's always the minimum, but that was not always the aimed for amount.
Yes,
Yeah.
we typically aim for 4 million, and then we've recently wanted to go a little higher to 5 to offset those increased costs. So that's why we've been working with the finance department to make sure we get as close to that number as we can within what's available to us.
Bad news I have for you, it's not going to be up to them. So it's going to be up to this mayor and council, but I think that's the discussion we're having.
But to your point, I think we all feel the same way you do, is a strong commitment to paving dollars. And I think that's the point I want you to make clear, is like, your commitment, the commitment has moved up. Like, your commitment to this, we agree with, we're on the same page. But from a clarity perspective, and I think maybe just eliminate the past budgets over the last 10 years, and you can see what the commitment's been on paving. I mean, but Ryan, you can throw that up, can you not? Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean.
No, this is helpful. I want to see this, yeah.
No, some questions came up earlier today, and we did pull this information going back to 2018. So 2018 was 1.8 million, 1 million in 2019, 1.2 in 2020. 2021, the city did allocate 2.5 along with the GTIB loan for a total of 8.3. But then in 22, that amount was down to 400,000. In FY23, this current fiscal year was 3 million.
And what was it in FY 17 and 18? You mentioned, I think you started it at 19.
I started at 18 was 1.8 million.
Okay, and what was 17?
I don't have that with me, but
I think that was what I had in my email when I asked you at 8 a.m. that I'm getting now, but that's helpful. I think bottom line is, I think the big picture is budget's all about priorities. And I see, and I've heard from a lot of residents, that repaving is a priority. As I mentioned earlier, sidewalks are a priority, as we talked about earlier, and many times, making sure that we're not running into deferred maintenance regarding parks. So I'm still not clear on the park budget, and that's where it comes down to, all right, it's all about priorities. Everything in here I'd love, but what I'm discussing is let's channel more of it into the things that we feel the majority of residents are really going to enjoy and really want. And so, for example, that's where I see getting back into, I have real concern with, we're increasing salaries, we're adding head count, all doing things as so many thousands of people are getting laid off all over the place, all over the country, in many different industries. And so, for example, customer service manager for $119,000 base salary, I'd actually argue we have multiple customer service managers. His name is Randy, his name is Rich, his name is Jason, his name is Jeff. These are all people that I expect to be fantastic customer service managers. And if that's not the case under all these different leaders, then I feel we need leaders that are making sure that we have a culture of customer service. So again, not to say I wouldn't love to have a customer service manager, but what I'd love to have even more is more residents having paved roads and sidewalks, et cetera. So those were kind of just my thought process.
Thank you, Councilmember, forgive me, Councilmember Palermo. Yes, sir, Councilmember Venstrom.
I think this time around on the budget, though, we do have an opportunity in the fact that we just had a bond referendum. And in that bond referendum, I think it's incumbent upon us to go back and review $107 million of parks funding that is for maintenance. And we also had, I think, upwards of $20 million for sidewalk. This may be the opportunity to say, hey, this year, we've already allocated some of this money, and it'll also be nice to look and see how far out that allocation will be effective as we look at making sure we don't have deferred maintenance down the road. But I think we do have funding that we have voted, the voters voted into place, so we have to be, I appreciate and applaud what you've both been saying about deferred maintenance, but realizing also we do have some in the budget already by nature of our bond referendum, and then moving forward from that.
Willie? Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilmember Mastrom. Forgive me.
Yes, sir. Councilman Vanstrom's absolutely correct. That was the entire premise of the bond and putting the bonds together the way that they were, was to take care of the high priority items, the big ticket items. So absolutely, that is spot on with the dollar amount that was passed for those big items. But yes, this is a good budget. It takes care of a lot of things that does free up funds for smaller projects. It's a huge budget for the Recreation and Parks group. So this is good for what we're talking about tonight.
Thank you, Willie. Yes, sir. Councilmember Vanstrom.
While we're on Recs and Parks, I have one quick question on page 92. Do you guys have I don't know if you have your catalog in front of you, Ryan. The contract services, I'm assuming that's is that where the dredging went? Because we went from 132 to 1.6 or 1.7 million, and I was just curious what that step up was. And it may very well be that. It's under operating.
That does include the dredging. There's also some other changes in there. There was some shift in bringing some of the operations and the revenues that were in the rec participation fund into the general fund, but we can get you all the details on that so that we don't have to.
I was assuming dredging was in there. Okay, thank you. One other quick one while I've got you, I'm sorry. I had some concerned voters ask me, what river sounds went to 0 on, if you go to, and I'm sure that there's an answer for that. Okay. Special Events Fund on page 96, river sounds, 52 to 0. Is there another way that we're funding that, or is that there? I know there is, and I was just clarifying if you could do so.
No, that is funded. It's within the Cultural Arts Center funding. So.
Do you have one of these? Do you have one? That's mine. That's yours? Where's mine? It's fine. I just brought it last week. All right. Thank you, Peter. Any other comments, thoughts, or questions from council? Very good. Ryan, anything else you want to address before we leave? Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Who would like to make a motion for the first reading? No, he can't do that. Mayor can't do it. He has to sit here with his hands in his pocket. Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor. I'll make a motion. A motion to approve the fiscal year 2024 budget for the city of Roswell, Georgia, in the amount of $194,275,364. This is the first reading.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor, please raise your hands. First reading, no? Not in favor? All right, let me ask a question again. All those in favor of passing the first reading of the FY24 budget, please raise your hands. So, all right, all those opposed, please raise your hands. All right, the motion passes 4-2. Thank you very much. All right. As mentioned, the second reading will be at the regular scheduled mayor and council meeting on June 12th. And we'll go from there. Next is the consent agenda. Does council have any questions or comments regarding any items on the consent agenda? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on any items of the consent agenda? I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Councilmember Hall, which Motion, would you make a motion, Councilmember Hall, to approve the consent agenda? Thank you. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is the Administration and Governance Department. Councilmember Hills, would you read the administration item, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wilson. Number 1, approval of a text amendment to amend Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2.5, Code of Ethics, Section 2.5.3, Prohibitions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell regarding appointments and nominations to boards and commissions. This is the first reading.
Thank you, Councilmember Hill. City Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2.5, Code of Ethics, Section 2.5.3, Prohibitions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell regarding campaign contribution and for other purposes. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment, the text of which is incorporated herein in red, and if approved, this would be the first reading.
Thank you. Thank you, City Attorney Davidson. Does council have any questions or comments in reference to the ordinance? Councilmember Beeson?
Just wanted to say that I am supportive of the ordinance. This came through working with legal to try to judge some language, and I appreciate their efficiency with that. It was a commitment that I had originally made while running for office, especially in reference to the Board of Ethics, that I have some concerns when you see the main primary board that determines if there's an ethics issue within our city government. It would then go to a board that's appointed by mayor and council. Mayor and council appoints these board members, and oftentimes, and it's not specific to any one time in Roswell's history, but throughout the scope of Roswell's history, you can see campaign donors on the list of Board of Ethics, to which me begged a larger question of, is that ethical? But the scope of the language itself spread out into other boards and commissions. I will say the way that it's reflected off of committee originally, voted against the amendment that was made by Councilmember Palermo with the addition of subsection L, which is the vote to approve the appointment or reappointment of a member where there's reason to believe, the council member has reason to believe that the member in question could receive a pecuniary benefit from decisions made by said board or commission. This prohibition would not apply to state law or areas of the Code of Ordinances that require the Board of Commission members to have specific qualifications. So for example, we do require, I believe, what's an architect to be on certain board positions. My hesitancy with that, and I renew this for council this evening, is because I do think there's certain situations where you want someone who has certain skill sets that can be able to provide input on boards and commissions, and you don't want to preclude them. But the larger question for me, and I say this as a council member, I'll take, John Smith from the public. I don't know instances where they could receive a pecuniary benefit. Y'all have watched me recuse myself. We watched Councilmember Palermo recuse himself this evening. It's on us because of an ordinance in the city that we have to know where we could potentially make money from something, or we have a client, or maybe we work in that wheelhouse, that we would recuse ourselves from those instances. That same ordinance is reflective of our boards and commissions currently. Boards and commissions are required to recuse themselves in the event that there's a line item that comes up where they could receive monetary benefit. The way that this is phrased is that the council member could have a reason to believe the member in question has a pecuniary benefit. I don't know what all of y'all's assets and investments and what you do for a living. I would not know that from my firsthand knowledge as a council member. I really still think that onus should be placed on the potential board member, or in this case, the existing board member, to recuse themselves. And the last point that I will make, because of my hesitancy with this language being added, this might be a question for the city attorney. How is this enforceable? How would you say later on down the road, 6 months, a year later, a board member or commission member comes across an item where they now all of a sudden have an interest, or I did not know that they had an interest. Oh, well, you were the person who made the recommendation for them to be on this board. Am I held liable as a council member? How is that enforced? That's it.
City Taylor Davidson, please, sorry.
Basically, we would have to show that you did know before you moved for that or voted for that appointment, which would be very difficult. This is basically an extra layer. Like you said, they are required to recuse themselves if they have, but this would prohibit them from even being on the board in the first place. So it's an extra layer, I guess, more so than anything.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sarah, any other thoughts? Okay, very good. Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I did campaign on the pay-to-play punchline, if you will, and I do believe in it, and I'm happy to have supported that first portion last year for that, and I remain steadfast in my decision on that. I did also vote to approve and move out of committee this particular piece that we're looking at and listening to tonight, but I've had some time to reflect on that and what that really means for me and my principles. I would like to point out that I believe that there are consequences with our elections, and sometimes that means that if my guy wins, then my guy or team gets to pick and nominate who they would like to have on said board or commission. And same thing if my guy loses and my arch enemy wins and that team is in office, they get to do the same. And I feel like micromanaging some of this would really strip us from the ability to put some excellent people that are qualified on our boards and commissions. So I feel strongly about that, and with all due respect for the opinions here with my colleagues, I appreciate all the input, but I will motion to approve this tonight to keep the verbiage correct, but I will not be voting to support it. So I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you, Lee. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. This is something I certainly am supporting tonight, and I think it is worth addressing the boards and commissions. With that, I am really focused on actual things that have occurred and making sure that they're not going to happen in the future. And so obviously I really appreciate Councilmember Hills having supported the pay to play regarding us and voting on developments, et cetera, which everybody up here voted for, which I really appreciate when we had that council vote, both with the resolution back in early 2022, as well as the ordinance in 2023. So I definitely appreciate City Council's support on that initiative, which did not have majority support in 2021. That being said, for this, so that was an issue where that was something that was occurring, and that was something creating a lot of distrust and concerns among residents. As for with this, so the ethics board example was used. With the ethics board example, I'm not sure of them ever meeting or ever having an actual meeting. It hasn't happened in Mr. Davidson, do you know the last time that has happened where the ethics board has actually met?
They have never met since I've been here, which is 23 years.
Yeah. And so with that, but that being said, the thought process behind it, I support it. So I'm fully supportive of it. I think it absolutely seems reasonable and fair to do that, but I think it's important that we're fully addressing the boards and commissions, and one that is a real thing that was occurring was having a developer appointed to a recommending body where they're recommending not what's best for Roswell residents, not anything with a Roswell perspective, but instead saying information that was not even really accurate, but for a specific point of view and things like that. So I think it is crucial that if we're appointing somebody to be one of these volunteers, that we should know that they're doing it not because they potentially profit off the decisions that we'd make, but instead that they're absolutely just being a resident voice and representing residents. I do think it's misleading to use, I know it's politically, I've seen it described as pay for power. I don't think that's a fair or accurate way to describe it, because in reality, these volunteer positions, with all due respect, I'm so appreciative of their support for our city. it is not a role where they're gaining power. The power is ultimately the city council that makes decisions. These are recommending bodies, or these are bodies that can make minor decisions that can be overruled by city council, et cetera. And so, but I think just to make it clear how someone should be appointed, I think it does make sense to have them not be donors and not be someone that's going to be potentially profiting off of the direction they're trying to direct. And again, another big example, the UDC. The UDC, when it first came out and had such a change towards high density and things like that, that certainly had a key member and had some members that absolutely were profiting off of the decisions that they were recommending on and things like that. So that's something that actually happened, and I think tonight we can change it by fully addressing the boards and commissions. And Councilman Beason, I wasn't clear if you're supporting it tonight or not supporting it, but I certainly hope it will have your support tonight, and would love to see this improvement or this enhancement.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Any other council comments or thoughts? Councilmember Beeson.
I guess my larger question has not really been answered as to how a council member would determine if somebody has a pecuniary interest. I appreciate the examples that were given, because that was something that I did request in committee, was the exact examples. Those, especially, I would use UDC as an example, and I am not an attorney, but it seems like those are instances where that person could be taken to court, where you could be showing a pecuniary interest and you did not recuse themselves. But in this instance, when we are deliberating appointments, how would you, offering this addition of the line item L, foresee that as being enforceable, or how we would deliberate that on council?
Councilmember Palermo.
So as for why hasn't there been any lawsuits or anything like that, and the requires to recuse yourself, the requirement to recuse yourself is based on individual projects. So for basically what we had seen, and this is going to address, is if a apartment developer has an item that comes in front of them that is their apartment development, then clearly they have to recuse themselves, and that's the way the policy works. If instead what's coming in front of them is a new zoning code that actually makes it easier to build large apartment buildings all over the city, that's not their specific property, so that's not something they would have recused themselves from. But back to the second question is ultimately, what this is doing is it's just creating a standard and expectation. Is anything that we do going to be 100% perfect? I believe the answer is no. But what this is doing is saying, okay, if I know that they have a pecuniary benefit from the recommendations that they'll give, then I should recuse myself. And ultimately, the public can decide if I was following the rule that I should have, and my colleagues can decide if I was following the rule I should have, and there certainly can be that discussion. But right now, there's no requirement against it, and so there's never been any question of assigning in the past or challenge of it. This is just going to create that opportunity, and I think it just moves us in the right direction.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Councilmember Mortland.
To summarize, this is just a preventative measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mortland. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Being that there are none, I take it to our Roswell residents to weigh in on the matter. Any comments, thoughts, or questions from Roswell residents? Thank you very much. Bring it back to council for any additional thoughts, comments, or questions on the matter at hand. Being that there are none, do I have a motion for this item? Councilmember Beeson.
So for all the years I've been here, there's a reason we have a liaison having the right to make a motion, so that it doesn't turn into everyone arguing to try to make a motion over the individual that's the liaison.
Completely understood. Respect the liaison. I will defer to her, just because I had the language introduced originally. So I will defer to Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Sarah. And it's my mistake. I just actually here, it's kind of, this one does not ascribe to Lee. So Lee, I apologize. Usually I have giving it to the liaison. This particular one does not have, it's wide open. I'm looking at mine. Sorry, not at yours. My bad. So Lee, would you like to make a motion on this particular issue at hand?
Sure. And I'll give my disclaimer, I will not be supporting this. However, for semantics and language, I will motion to approve of a text amendment to amend Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2.5, Code of Ethics, Section 2.5.3, Prohibitions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell regarding appointments and nominations to boards and commissions. First
Thank you,
reading.
Lee. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Beeson. All those in favor of the approval of this particular text amendment, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Wow, passes 5-1. So that particular text amendment just passed. First reading. Yeah, okay. Wow. Yeah, kind of the usual nonsense that we has, continue to be theatrical and go on and do something and waste one another's time and the people's time. Next is the Finance Department. Councilmember Hall, would you read the next item?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Yes, the approval of Budget Amendment 314-000-050-05-22-23 to appropriate bond proceeds.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Ryan, would you explain the item, please, sir?
Yes, Mayor. So you all just approved the bond resolutions earlier, and this is an item to actually allocate those bond proceeds out to the various bond projects that have been discussed over the last couple of months. A couple things I wanted to point out. The funding, so this allocates the bond proceeds to those individual bond projects that was based on mayor and council priorities. The funding also is allocated to bond project management. So this includes the city's CIP division that has been previously approved by mayor and council, the 3 positions, as well as some of the time of the director and deputy director within environmental public works, as well as we are including within this $1 million allocation for the external program management contract. That's currently in the procurement process, and it's the Environmental Public Works Department will be bringing that to Mayor and Council for approval here in the next month, I believe. So we are trying to get a little bit ahead and get this budget established for that. But overall, this budget amendment will establish that budget authority and allows the project execution to proceed. So just a couple of items to summarize what is included. So there was a draft included in your packet, but we provided you a final copy this evening based on the bond sale and knowing what the final proceeds are. So everyone should have a copy of that at your seat from earlier. Extras if no one has one. So going over this, this first slide gives you an overview of the budget amendment for the first question, which is the recreation parks, bicycle and pedestrian paths, and sidewalks. So just to kind of walk you through what this looks like. So the source of funds for this question, the par amount for the bond proceeds was $53.1 million. The premium came in at $1.9 million. So it's a total source of funds for this question of a little over $55 million. Now on the use of funds, the cost of issuance of that is $316,000. The underwriter's discount is $318,000. And that leaves project funds of $54.3 million available to go directly to projects. So you can see on this screen also that previously over the last couple of months, mayor and council have already approved budget amendments of $2.2 million. So we're taking that off of the project fund total of 54, and that leaves $52.1 million available to appropriate this evening through this budget amendment. And this is a quick summary of what that looks like. I know there's a lot of numbers here. The first column, those are all the various projects that fall into this bond question. The next column shows you that where you all had previously approved a budget amendment for certain projects that adds up to the $2.289 million. The budget amendment we're recommending tonight includes the dollar amounts across all of these various projects that adds up to the $52.1 million. So that would leave us with a total authorized budget for these bond projects of $54.3 million. Just the first question. On the second question, this is the public safety question. So with this, the par amount sold today was $13.1 million. That yielded a premium of $461,000, which gave us a total source of funds of $13.56 million. The cost of issuance for this bond question was a little over $78,000. Underwriter's discount of $78,600. That leaves a project fund amount of $13.4 million. No previous budget amendments were approved for this particular question. You all did approve some, but that was just for impact fees at the time, so no bond funding had been approved previously for public safety. So that leaves all of those funds, all those project funds available to appropriate this evening. This shows you how that's spread out across the various public safety projects. Essentially, this gets Fire Station 23 moving with design and construction over the next several years. Land acquisition is included for 21, 22, and 27. It also includes some initial funding for the public safety facility and headquarters, as well as I mentioned before, the bond project management that includes both the internal CIP division and the potential external contract that's working its way through the process. And then finally, the third question, our public parking deck. Here the par amount sold was $20 million. That yielded a premium of $83,000, so total source of funds of $20,083,000. Again, cost of issuance about $120,000. Underwriter's discount is $79,000. That left total project funds of $19.88 million. Previously, Mayor and Council had approved $117,500 in budget amendments for this particular question. So that leaves $19.766 million available to appropriate through this budget amendment. So obviously one project here, but again, we are including funding for the internal CIP division as well as the external contract. This is really an estimate at this point based on essentially the total costs distributed pro rata across the three questions based on the size of the total bonds. This could be adjusted in the future based on this will be adjusted based on the actual time that that is allocated by the staff and by the contract to the various bond questions. So this shows you that we're recommending $19.766 million tonight for a budget amendment, which will get you to the total authorized amount of $19.883. That's the conclusion. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Does council have any questions or comments for Mr. Luckett? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. Luckett. So I'm going to give you my big picture question, and then I'll walk through my three examples so you know why I'm asking my big picture question. My big picture question is, if council approves this tonight, is this giving staff, any of these departments, the green light on anything without having a clear, transparent public process? So that's a big picture question, but here's the three examples. So, for example, Woodstock Soccer Complex. So definitely a very important initiative. So it mentions, first of all, concerning it's only showing design and engineering, not construction. So I guess I'd want to also understand why is it not showing construction. But regarding design and engineering, want to make sure there's a public process because, and when I say public process, meaning this is going to have, whatever direction it's going to go is going to have to come to committee, it's going to have to come to council, because the big question will be, do we stay as grass and really get top of the line drainage when right now there's no drainage at all? Or do we go towards the crumb rubber, which has the different issues and things like that? I know we've had the discussion of the most family-friendly community in America certainly has grass fields and not just so many of the crumb rubber, which have the different challenges. So I want to make, so that's one example of just kind of the question is there going to be the process, clear process, or is staff going to be able to start spending this stuff to do a design and engineering without council having publicly voted on it? So that's another example. Bike ped master plan and sidewalk gap list. Is this doing it, if council votes for this tonight, is that giving staff the ability to select where those sidewalks would be without council voting on it in a public meeting? And then, as we go into public safety, so I see Station 21 for land acquisition. I don't understand why that doesn't have design and engineering. And then the final question, I guess they are kind of three separate questions under the high level one, is, so it shows land acquisition for 22, for 23, and certainly the hope is we end up having the perfect spot for all of those. But for example, if one of those we did not have the perfect spot, and there ends up being the need to build a second story or do something like that, do we still have the ability to do that? Or have we set ourselves in stone that says because we did this, we no longer have the ability to not acquire land and to do things differently? So those are all my questions, if you can hopefully unpack them.
I'll answer the last one first. So mayor and council will still have the ability to move funds between projects or move funds between phases of projects. So if something happened where, a project took a different turn, that definitely could happen, no problem. Your other questions, high-level questions, I would say that is going to be probably a project-by-project question, and would be the responsibility of the CIP division to make sure that they have adequate direction from mayor and council, and they may need to come back and get that direction from you all before they move forward. This is providing the budget authority, but obviously they would need to make sure they have the right direction from you all before they move forward with that.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Yes, Councilmember Palermo, do you have something else?
So that doesn't answer my question, because I think, and with all due respect, I think it probably is more of a question for... Thank you. So that said that you'd expect that, but it didn't sound 100% definite. And so I guess that's my question for, I don't know if that's for Mr. Knighton or Mr. Davidson, but I want to make sure that if we vote for this tonight and staff ends up spending money and going down a path that the residents opposed, it can't just be, well, you know what, on May 22nd, you voted for that right there. And I'm saying, I didn't realize that was to knock down Bullock Hole to put a fire station up. Well, no, you voted on it right there. So that's where I want to make sure that I support this. I love getting this moving. I want to get it moved as fast as possible tonight. But I want to make sure that the residents are going to have a transparent process where we're not spending $1 million on a design that the mayor and council ends up being opposed to. That's my concern there.
Mr. Knighton, do you want to?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Luckett. Obviously, we're seeking budget authorization tonight. However, there are still parameters in place with respect to procurement thresholds, et cetera, that would have to be adhered to as we move forward. And so for those items that are beyond those particular thresholds would have to come back before mayor and council in the appropriate fashion to receive your direction and or approval. And it's certainly my hope that as we progress along this path of completing bond projects expediently, that we will be in constant communication with mayor and council to apprise you of our progress.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Councilmember Palermo, follow up?
What is the threshold?
Well, there are various thresholds right now. There's the $75,000 threshold, which constrains the city administrator in a number of ways. There are other thresholds, I believe $100,000 for certain projects as well. There are a couple of things that, honestly, that we hope to be able to bring back to you in terms of how we proceed, ensuring that there is best value for projects, and also that there's a fair and equitable process, as always, for procurement. So we do have some recommendations that at some point we'll bring to you for committee for your review and or approval. But there are definitely thresholds in place specifically for capital improvement projects that, of course, that we will adhere to in accordance with our current policies.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I just want to follow up for clarity. So item number 5, Groveway Community Park. There's an earmarked amount for design and engineering of $480,000. So that would come when the CIP project team brings that forward. That will come to mayor and council for approval for up to spending that amount. And at that time, we would be able to impart information and see the design or put parameters in where we can budget it, and then the design would be brought forward. There'd be public input and so on and so forth. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes, as of today, I mean, a contract of that size, a design contract would come to mayor and council for approval before it would move forward, be awarded.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? At this time, I bring it, have I been to Roswell residence? Did I take it out? Oh, Councilmember Mortland?
To touch on Councilman Palermo's first question about the Woodstock soccer fields, and I may lean on Director Leatherman real quick to fill in the blanks, but the reason that we are under a design and engineering number right there is because the decision has not been made to either go to a turf or continue with grass. Is that correct? Okay. So the reason for that design and engineer piece is for them to break out the differences and provide us with that feedback so we can have an intelligent decision around the cost benefit, the cost savings, all the things. Does that flow? There you go. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Will. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Being that none, I take it to Roswell residents for any comments or questions on the matter at hand. Being that there are none from any Roswell residents, bring it back to the council for any final closing, additional thoughts, comments, or questions. Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent. So again, I'm excited to support this. I'm happy to hear that any of these designs, any of these big dollar amounts, which are all of them, are going to be approved by council in a public meeting. And just want to be completely clear, I guess Chief Panino is not here, but if there was a recommendation to council to tear down a historic home for a fire station, he would need to find a new place to work. But Chief Panino is a doctor, and I'm confident he would not be doing that. But all joking aside, I do really appreciate staff having this together so fast, and can't wait for the CIP division to be bringing us rapid fire items to be moving forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Being that there are none, Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, Mayor. Motion to approve the budget amendment 314-00000052223 to appropriate the bond proceeds.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. City Attorney Davidson, would you please read your item on your report?
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Do I have a motion for closure? Do I have a motion for closure? I have a motion for closure by Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Goes to closure. I'm sorry. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Being that there are no other items, this mayor and council meeting of May 22nd, 2023 is adjourned. Thank you.